Halloween celebrations in the district of Itaewon here in the capital city this past Saturday turned into a horrific calamity that took the lives of at least 154 people, mostly young women. So what caused the tragedy? Why were so many young women killed? And what has been the international response to this tragedy? Welcome to Issues and Insiders. Korea is reeling in the aftermath of the Halloween tragedy that unfolded in the Itaewon district of Seoul this past Saturday. For more, I have Kwon Soa here in the studio with me. So welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I also have Sebastien Falletti with us live on the line, that is. Sebastien, it's good to have you with us.
Good afternoon.
So let's start here in the studio then. Let's begin with the timeline of this tragedy as well as the tallies as of this Monday afternoon.
Sonny, the tragic stampede led to over 300 casualties, 303 to be exact. 154 people have been confirmed dead. This number remains same as late Sunday afternoon. The number of injured has gone up to 149 as of this Monday. Now, more than 4,000 people have been reported missing as of this morning. Now, most victims' bodies have been identified except for one. Young women in their 20s accounted for the most fatalities. There were also dozens of victims in their 30s, some in their 40s, and even 11 teens. And 26 were foreigners from 14 nationalities. So let's go back to the tragic night on Saturday. Tens of thousands of people, according to reports, the crowd may have been as large as 100,000, were estimated to have been enjoying Halloween festivities in Itaewon in Yongsan district, which is one of the most iconic nightlife streets in Seoul before the place started to become a nightmare. Now, at around 10:15 p.m., screams came out of an alley beside Hamilton Hotel. That was when the first emergency calls were made. That said around 10 people are buried beneath other people, and reports also that came in later said people are having breathing difficulties. Fire authorities from a nearby fire station were deployed 2 minutes later, as well as ambulances, which, however, struggled to get to the accident site due to the massive amount of people in the streets. Now, rescue operations at the site were difficult as well, as the alley was packed in overcapacity and people were stacked on each other, making it difficult to rescue those at the bottom. Now, the scene of the accident was described as having happened instantly, according to witnesses, after people from both directions started to push each other, and then once one person started to fall, people toppled like dominoes, is what witnesses are saying. And this in a narrow 4-meter wide downhill alley. At some point, it was just around 3 meters wide. So dozens of people were lying unconsciously on the ground. Hundreds of people needed CPR, which was conducted by not only the rescuers, but ordinary people. A first stage response was issued at 10:43 p.m., which was upgraded to stage 2 and 3 at 11:13 and 11:50 p.m. respectively. And in total, around 2,700 personnel, including fire and police staff, were mobilized. Now, this was the first Halloween after most of the COVID-19 restrictions were lifted, including the mandatory outdoor rule for mask wearing, and it led to the deadliest stampede in the country. And also, it was the worst tragedy after the 2014 Seoul ferry incident that killed 304 people, mostly high school students.
Right. Sebastien, contrary to initial reports that 2 foreigners had lost their lives, as Soa mentioned earlier, dozens of foreigners are on the list now of fatalities. Do tell us a bit more about this, Sebastien.
Of course, the tally has been going up, as Soa said. Now we are counting 26 foreign nationals being counted dead during this tragedy. The number keeps going up. Of course, as we know, Itaewon was a magnet for the young crowd in Seoul, but including a lot of young foreigners here. So this is probably not surprising. We're counting people, victims from Russia, China, US, Australia, Iran, and Thailand. And now from last night, we have one from France. The last 2 days, the embassy of all countries have been scrambling to identify potential victims. And that's the case from France. They have been trying to find out until last night. It wasn't clear, but the bad news was confirmed late last night. So there's still a risk of more casualties coming in the coming hours, since there are still at least more than 30 people who are in hospital in a dangerous situation. So we have to stay put on that one.
It's a very difficult time, of course. So President Yoon Suk-yeol on Sunday declared a period of national mourning in light of this, of course, very sad and shocking event. Tell us more.
Right. On Sunday, President Yoon Suk-yeol addressed the nation's people from the presidential office and announced a period of national mourning until, quote, the accident is brought under control. So the government designated this week-long period until midnight of November 5th, during which the nation will mourn the victims. And all government offices, as well as overseas missions, will have their flags lowered and cancel non-essential public events. Civil servants will be wearing ribbons to express their condolences during this period. Now, calling it a tragedy and disaster that should have never happened, President Yoon called the government on placing top priority in recovery and follow-up measures. Now, also this morning, President Yoon and First Lady Kim Gun-hee visited a memorial altar that's set up for the victims of at Seoul Plaza. And since 10 a.m., the altar is also open to the entire public, and so is a similar one altar near Itaewon, or in Itaewon actually. It's near the Noksapyeong station. Now, Yongsan district, meanwhile, where Itaewon is situated, has been designated as a special disaster zone, which makes it subject to financial and other support from the central government. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo gave a briefing on the Itaewon accident this morning, and he called on people that make disturbing remarks or post provocative footages on their social media or share false information about the victims should stop these acts. And he also vowed for the government support to the bereaved families, not only in and out of Seoul, but also those that are coming into the country for the funeral procedures.
Right. And Sebastien, staying with that, what has been the response from the international community with regard to this tragic loss here in Seoul?
Well, you've seen there was a lot of statements from foreign leaders around the world, including US President Joe Biden, but also China's President Xi Jinping, or French President Emmanuel Macron, who said he was standing with Korean people. I think this tragedy is gathering a lot of attention, and I'm all around the world because it's a very it's a tragedy that could happen anywhere. People feel like, you know, it's a place where young people went to party. A lot of people associate themselves saying, it could be my son, it could be my daughter in any country around the world. So that's make the interest. I can see even from my country, my paper, there's a lot of demand to understand this tragedy, because it feels like next door, you know, even though it's happening far side of the world, it still feels very familiar, the setting.
Right. And talking about the efforts to try to understand this tragedy over in France, as Sebastien mentioned. So what has been disclosed about the cause of this tragic accident thus far?
Well, over the weekend, the focus was really on rescuing as many people as possible before looking into the exact cause of the accident. Now, what started as a presumed stampede is now being called a stampede by the authorities. And the Seoul Metropolitan Police has set up an investigation headquarters on the night of the incident to identify the victims and to determine the cause of the tragedy. 475 police staff have been deployed for the probe. And this afternoon, the police and the National Forensic Service reportedly started a joint on-site investigation at 2 p.m. CCTV footages and social media videos are also being analyzed in the process. I think they have dozens of these now. So far, what's evident in the footage of the incident night is obviously the massive number of people in a way too crowded place. But regarding the trigger of the accident, that has to be looked further into. There are rumors that people started to surge as a celebrity appeared nearby, and also witnesses say some people at the scene started to push each other. So experts are cautiously predicting, though, that this case is one where it could be difficult to hold individuals accountable for.
Right, I see. And Sebastien, you've been covering this deadly disaster for Le Figaro over the weekend, of course, and today probably as well. What can you share with us about your coverage?
Well, I mean, I've been there since during the night, and of course interviewed a lot of people who escaped from the tragedy. It was a night of chaos, of course, and of grief. But I think to follow up on what Soa was saying, there's a big question mark about how this evening was handled by the security force. Of course, the trigger of this tragedy is still under investigation, and it's unclear what was the real cause. But one thing that struck me from all the people I talked to, witnesses on the ground, and from what I saw, is that there was very little police seen in Itaewon that evening. I was nearby in the early evening. There was very few officers there. And so there is a question here to what extent the authorities were prepared to handle such a crowd. We know that Itaewon is a magnet, especially on Halloween Saturday night. There was the first time after COVID. There was a sense of party revenge, I think, among a lot of young people. The weather was amazing. All these factors probably contributed to bring a lot of people here. But clearly, there was very few officers visible on the ground there. So that question, I think, is going to be one of the key in the coming days that the authorities are going to have to face.
Right, and so I understand all planned Halloween activities have been cancelled here on the local front as the nation mourns this very difficult time.
Right, in various sectors we're seeing cancellations. The distribution industry cancelled Halloween events, cultural events, concerts have been cancelled. And SM Entertainment, one of Korea's top entertainment agencies, cancelled its annual SM Town Halloween party, which has been very famous. And they asked for the fans' understanding, but they didn't, in the announcement, they didn't specify the reason, but it seems to be linked to the disaster. And K-pop singers have postponed their song releases. Amusement parks called off their Halloween festivities as well as parades. And a firework festival that was scheduled to take place on November 5th in Busan has been called off as well. And stores in Itaewon decided to close throughout the national mourning period as well.
Right, and Sebastien, such shocking stories of stampedes have also been shared beyond national borders as well this year, right?
Unfortunately, not only this year. This kind of tragedy happen all around the world regularly. Of course, one of the latest was the case in Indonesia on this soccer stadium. But the management of crowd is actually a very complex issue, but it requires preparedness because you have to look at the flux of people. This is something that cannot be improvised. And it's not only about the number of officers you deploy on the ground, it's also about understanding the space, where the location, the way it's organized, the architecture. And of course, there is also unexpected event that can just change plans, and that's what makes these catastrophe happening regularly. So of course, what's happening in Itaewon now is going to require a lot of investigation, take a step back and understand really what was the cause. There's the trigger, but there's also the more structural cause that could lead to such a disaster, make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Right, of course, as some pundits said, there are so many questions at this point and so few answers. But in the meantime, though, Sebastien, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts. And Soa, here in the studio, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you, Sunny.
Thank you.
Right, and on that note, we end this edition of Issues and Insiders with our deepest condolences to all those affected by the senseless Itaewon tragedy. Our prayers and thoughts to you. Thank you for watching.